Why the sudden influx of high-profile names to Texas? What's the draw card of big-profile companies setting up headquarters in Texas? And whose pockets are lined with billions of dollars? Let's find out in the 15 things you didn't know about Texas. Number 1. Bigger and better. Texas has a reputation for being bigger and better. They've got the largest state capitol building, the highest speed limit at 85 miles per hour on one particular stretch of road, an oversized portion of obese adults at 30%, and emit double the amount of greenhouse gases than any other state. And then they've got their billionaires. In total, Texas has 64 billionaires with a combined net worth of $460.1 billion, and 20 of those billionaires made their fortunes in the energy sector. Number 2. She's the wealthiest woman in America. And the wealthiest person in Texas. Meet Alice Walton, worth $62.3 billion. She's the only daughter of Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, and despite her family's thriving business, Walton pursued her own business passions, which included financing, investing, and brokering. She went on to start her own bank called Llama Company, which closed in the 1990s. Walton calls Fort Worth, Texas home. She's involved in the arts and spent most of her life working with cutting horses, having been the owner of 6 championship horses. Horses, it would appear, are a common hobby for the Texas elite, but let's look some more at this. Number 3. Horses in Texas. Texans love their horses. According to Texas Time Travel, Texas is considered the #1 horse state in the country. They add, North Texas Horse Country Driving Tour also produces superior thoroughbreds, paints, Arabians, and Appaloosas. Texans love their horses so much that it's not uncommon to see one going through a drive-thru at a Starbucks, as recently seen at the new Starbucks in Marshall. 2 photos emerged thanks to Darlene Evans, who captioned them with, "Starbucks open today in Marshall, only in Texas." Number 4. You'll find the wealthy living at large in these areas. Bunker Hill, Houston is a favorite, with residents here having a net worth of roughly $10.4 million. Net worth rises in Preston Hollow, Dallas, where it sits at $16.6 million. River Oaks in Houston is $11.4 million, and University Park, Dallas is $12.9 million. These net worths are a set standard when it comes to the tech industry flocking to the state to settle down. So, why the sudden rush? Well, let's find out. Number 5. Silicon Valley is heading to Austin, Texas. NBCnews.com reported that the desire for cheaper expenses and to avoid costly local laws drives business relocations. Tech giant Oracle moved their headquarters to Austin. Software giant Palantir also moved to Austin, along with 10 to 15 employees. And by 2022, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise will be settled down in the Houston suburb of Spring. There are several reasons why there is a sudden influx of companies moving to Texas. Lower tax rates, cheaper housing, and regulations are not super intense, making it easier for companies to do business. As DecideConsulting.com confirms, there's already an abundance of technical talent all over Texas. Any company moving here can tap into a well-experienced talent pool. There's also a well-educated stream of new talent graduating from top schools like Texas, Rice, University of Houston, and Texas A&M. The on-again, off-again richest man in the world also calls Texas home. We'll tell you more about that shortly. Number 6. The most expensive home in Austin snapped up. We'd love to give credit where credit is due, but the buyer of this $38.9 million Austin home prefers to stay anonymous. The grounds span across 9 acres of lush lawn and sits on Lake Austin, with more than 665 feet of water frontage. But that's not the only water on this luxury property. There's a lagoon, boat dock, and infinity pool. The dwelling is glass-walled and features a 3-story guesthouse that made an appearance on Architectural Digest. Since the influx of big-name companies, the cost of housing in Austin has skyrocketed. MaisonGlobal.com says the sellers, Engel & Volkers Austin, are declining to give the final selling price of this abode. However, if it did sell for the market price, it would officially be the most expensive home sold in Austin, Texas. Number 7. Joe Rogan could be neighbors with our anonymous buyer. Well, that depends on which side of the lake Rogan is on. But his new property, also located on the shores of Lake Austin, was bought for $14.4 million. That's nothing considering the $100 million deal he signed with Spotify in 2020. His new mansion boasts 10,890 square feet, 8 bedrooms, and 10 bathrooms. There's a saltwater swimming pool, a solarium, and a party deck. Other neighbors include Sandra Bullock and John Paul DeJoria. And don't forget to watch our video 15 of the richest podcast hosts to learn more about how Joe Rogan is able to afford this $1 million mansion. You might even spot him indulging in an expensive milkshake at Texas' first sugar factory, where the milky treats cost $31. And speaking of, number 8, the sugar factory heads to Uptown, Dallas. DallasNews.com reported that Texas will be getting its very first sugar factory. The Kardashian sisters, Drake, and Mariah Carey have all been to events at this dessert wonderland in its Vegas location. Here, you can order the Caramel Sugar Daddy Cheesecake Milkshake for $19, or the S'mores Whiskey Spiked Milkshake for $31. But if those are below your price range, we suggest the Sugar Factory King Kong Sundae for $99. It's enough to satisfy 12 people. Let's find out who might make up a party of 12 at the Sugar Factory. Number 9. Big names moving to the state. First on the list would be Elon Musk, our on-again, off-again richest person in the world. As cited by CNBC.com, Musk said, "For myself, yes, I have moved to Texas." Breyer's Capital CEO James W. Breyer has moved to Texas and opened a second office in Austin. In an interview with Nancy Fetchney, the co-lead at Towview Ventures and partner at Flight Ventures Capital Factory, Breyer said, "I love the live music, the Austin vibe, the different neighborhoods, the weirdness, as well as entrepreneurial opportunities. Everything from food trucks to food entrepreneurs to the Texas Hill Country." And as a side note, Fetchney has also recently made the move to Texas, as reported by KXAN.com. Goldman Sachs' Chad Wallace moved to Dallas. Dropbox CEO Drew Houston has bought a home in Austin, and Splunk CEO Douglas Merritt has also recently bought in Austin. Number 10. Where's all the money in Texas from? Besides being in the pockets of the uber-wealthy, wealth in Texas is derived from several areas, with the oil industry being the biggest moneymaker. The presence of oil in Texas has been known for centuries, and the first oil well was completed by Line Taliaferro Barrett in 1866. Fill in the gaps and stop at 2018 when Texas had the highest year of oil production ever. They generated 1.59 billion barrels of oil. Petroleum products are the state's largest export, but advanced computer and machinery components account for 5 of its 10 main exports, according to markets.businessinsider.com. Number 11. Oil isn't the only money spinner in Texas. Not everyone in Texas is going around making money in the oil industry. Others, like Michael Dell, have made millions in computers. Tillman Fertitta has made his money starting successful restaurants. And then there's Mark Cuban, who basically made his money in everything. And now it seems that Austin will be the next Silicon Valley. Forbes.com mentioned 2 years ago that there are so many tech companies in Austin, it's been nicknamed Silicon Hills. Some of the startups that began in Austin include AppSumo, Onnit, Rollick Outdoor, and Sensei. Austin is known as a great place for startups, and Angelos Giangelo, former vice president for economic development for the Austin Chamber of Commerce, affirms that Austin attracts annually about $1 billion in venture capital investment and another $1 billion in corporate entity investments. Number 12. Wine also needs some credit. Not only is Texas synonymous for oil, but wine also puts the state on the map, and for all the right reasons. Texas produces more than $13 billion in wine every year. 40 years ago, they were ranked number 48th of the wine-producing states. Fast forward to 2020, and they're sitting as the 5th largest producer of wine in the USA. Number 13. Taxes are seriously low. Aluxers, we mentioned earlier that taxes are low in Texas, but how low is low? Texas is one of the 9 states that forbids personal income tax. They instead rely on high sales and use taxes. Time magazine provides some figures. Texas collects roughly $3,500 per resident. California receives around $4,900, and New York in the region of $7,400. With those figures at hand, it's easy to see why people are heading to the Lone Star State. But there is a downside, though, which we'll explain next. Number 14. Texas uses its own power grid. The Texas power crisis made headlines globally when 4.3 million homes and businesses across the state were without power. Texas is essentially on its own power grid. In the U.S., there are 3 power grids, one for the states between the Pacific and the Rocky Mountains, the others for states east of the Rocky Mountains, and Texas. Texas received its own power grid during World War II when factories were making essential war supplies and needed to be self-sustainable. TechnologyReview.com explains why the grid failed. Frigid temperatures drove electricity demand to a new winter record that exceeded even the extreme demand scenario considered by the state's power grid operator, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT. So there might be one major downside to living in Texas, but we've got several reasons why it would be a great place to live, particularly Austin, where you could bump into Matthew McConaughey, Elijah Wood, or Brooklyn Decker. Number 15. Living the good life. Austin, Texas has been voted the #1 place to live in America for several years running. It's affordable, job prospects are good, and quality of life is even better. It's voted one of the top 15 cities to visit in the U.S., as voted by travel and leisure readers, and Texas overall is voted as the top spot for female entrepreneurs, as found in a survey done by Fit Small Business. Currently, almost 1 million businesses are women-owned. Austin is also the live music capital of the world. If you've never been to a concert in Austin, have you even been to a concert? There are rivers, lakes and swimming holes, waterfalls, hiking and biking trails. There's a restaurant for every foodie and an activity for every hobby. It's a friendly, safe city where people visit and end up staying a lot longer than they anticipated. Like, sometimes forever. So, would you ever consider a move to Texas? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Now, you stuck with us until the end. Here's your bonus. Texas has a bad rap when it comes to power, but they do make up for it with wind power. They're the largest producer of wind power in the states. In 2017, their windmills produced 21,044 megawatts. Trailing behind them was Iowa at number 2, with only 6,952 megawatts. And that, Aluxers, is not just blowing hot air. Thanks for watching. We always appreciate your continued support, likes, and subscriptions.